It is a dark and stormy night for the Shills, left out in the cold by the Walt Disney Company because the Shills believed that they were in sync when they joined forces with Charmin Obeyed Chinoy, saying it was the year, finally, in 2024, when a woman should shape Star Wars. Now, the Shills are, well, separated from that which they love most, the Walt Disney Company, because Disney didn't want Charmin Obeyed Chinoy this year. Hello folks, welcome back to the WDW Pro channel. A joy as always, happy to have each and every one of you with us today. And today we are sharing with you a rather humorous story, and that is that, well, the Shills got confused. Folks, we have so much fun sometimes covering entertainment. And in particular, it's always a joy to watch as different groups don't necessarily come up with their own ideas, but rather formulate their opinions based on whether or not they think it's in their interest for gaining access and prestige and all of that. Does it further the message? Well, today we're going to share with you what's been going on with the Rey movie and the switcheroo that Disney pulled and how much fun that has been. Let's dive straight into the conversation right now. The Shills, I'm going to call them the Shills, although I used to like Paul Tassi, but this is below the pale. We talked about this on the Valiant Renegade show, the Renegade Online show, Sunday night. We're going to talk about it again because I think this has something to say about why the need was felt to put out this statement today. Because this is where they were. Forbes, the place this was. We all remember the days of Scott Mendelson. Now we're in the days of Paul Tassi. Star Wars directors make men uncomfortable, quote, is 8 years out of context. This by Paul Tassi. The headline I'm okay with. It's the rest of the stuff that gets a little bit grating. It is unequivocally, absolutely disgusting how certain segments of the Star Wars fan base, and even politicians like Ted Cruz, are piling on upcoming Star Wars director Charmin Obeyed Chinoy, this time for a quote where she said that she wants to make men feel uncomfortable. I would say this was already all over the YouTubes in the past. We already covered this. We covered this like a year ago. This was old news. The video Cruz is sharing from anti-Crusader Matt Walsh shows Obeyed Chinoy on a panel, and it's being characterized as a recent quote about her plan for her Rey-led Star Wars movie. That is not at all true. I don't think it's being presented as being recent. Otherwise, why would you link directly to the video? If you want to trick people, you wouldn't link directly to the video where they can see the timestamp. That's crazy. In reality, this quote is not even from this decade.
It's a straw man argument, though, isn't it? You have to
try
to frame it like, people are thinking that this is Star Wars. No one thinks it's Star Wars. No one.
Now, you have to go down here to this.
The mindset, isn't it?
Yes, and you have to go down to this paragraph to finally get to some truthfulness. That is where it says, this is the second time in a few weeks, also known as a week, an Obeyed Chinoy quote has made the rounds in this crowd. And by the way, the prior quote, which is the lead in this article, well, it would not have even been of interest had the second quote not happened, which is the most recent, which is what I would say that Tassi should have led with the last one actually about Star Wars itself, albeit willingly misread many times over. So we're going to find out what we were misreading, because this is the defense that apparently was not working well enough, and Star Wars had to put out an announcement to get the narrative switched over. So here's the defense. There, Obeyed Chinoy said, we're in 2024. It's about time we have a woman shape a story in a galaxy far, far away. This led men, by the way, now that's a factually inaccurate statement. It's offensive to women. It paves over the accomplishments of Marcia Lucas, who is largely responsible for the Star Wars we have today. It is a stolen valor comment so that Miss Chinoy can have a fake glass ceiling to break through. But she said the quote, this led men to start listing important female Star Wars characters. How dare they? But Obeyed Chinoy is obviously referring to her being the first female director.
It's a very colonialist thing to do, listing things.
It is, and the funny thing is, so here's what Tassi tries to do. Tassi tries to say, no, it's not what she actually said. It's not about shaping the story. She's trying to say, apparently he thinks she's not verbose. Perhaps she's just not quick on her feet with her vernacular. But he's trying to say, no, that's not what she meant at all. Despite what you read, you're supposed to then insert a different meaning behind it, and that is that she's the first director. But that also is not true, Mr. Tassi. It's only true if you make this be about movies instead of 1 hour long episodes, because Bryce Dallas Howard owns that. But pave over her accomplishment if it is so necessary to maintain the narrative going forward. As I said previously, this discourse is going to be an utter nightmare. Obeyed Chinoy is going to keep delivering completely normal quotes. Guys, question. Imagine that I hired someone to be a district manager over a home improvement store. And imagine that district manager said, we want to make men or contractors or home builders be uncomfortable 8 years ago. And imagine that same person, after I hire them, puts out a statement saying, well, it's about time someone such as myself ran a home improvement store. And suddenly, that first quote that's more problematic gets picked up. I would suggest that the answer to that is not to defend, because you've already offended your main demographic. And that's crazy. And the thing is, and Paul Tassi and the rest of the Shills, they tried this. Folks, you can go read that article. We recommend you do. We're not going to sit here and read it all the time. I just want you to understand. The Shills failed Kathleen Kennedy. That's the message here. The Shills failed Kathleen Kennedy. They were unable to move the narrative the way that Lucasfilm needed. They were unable to convince all of you out there that what Obey Chinoy was saying was normal and appropriate. You were not movable. And so then they went to this, which is, let's go to something else now. Let's talk about The Mandalorian, and let's talk about Jon Favreau, because they still like Favreau. That's the point here. And in no other domain of life does it work to come out and say, hey, I would like to invite you into doing something with me. Also, I want to make you uncomfortable. That doesn't work in any entrepreneurial enterprise on the planet that I can think of. Not even dentists want you to believe that you'll be uncomfortable when you sit in that chair. Panel, have the Shills finally utterly failed the friends at Lucasfilm?
Yes, they have. They absolutely have, because here's the thing. You have somewhere in the neighborhood of 400 YouTube channels out here commenting on this thing. It's hard to gaslight people when you have that many voices in the atmosphere commenting on something, breaking it down, highlighting your comments, saying exactly what she said, and not trying to lie to you and spin it like, Paul Tassi is. When you have that many voices, and that's the power of, social media, is you have voices that are coming out and saying, hey, I found this clip. Listen to what she says. When I think it was that Star Wars girl posted something on Twitter saying she loves being the activist. She puts activism in every single thing that she does. This is who this woman is. And so it's hard to gaslight people when you have this many voices. You have channels, you have, WDW Pro and everybody that you see on this panel. You have all of these voices coming out and speaking the truth. Okay. And that's the problem that the mainstream entertainment media has had. They have too many voices out there and they can't silence us all. So when you see that happening, this is the problem. And they can't gaslight everybody. They can't gaslight forever. So what do? They have to start to change the narrative. All right, let's go ahead and throw out the Mandoverse movie or the Mandalorian and Grogu, because this isn't working. Okay. This
January 9th.
Too many people see right through it.
Winter. You're exactly right.
Yeah. Yeah, right in the middle of winter when nobody's, you would give this, like you stated earlier, you would give this a big production, something like Celebration. You're going to bring Kathleen Kennedy out on stage with Jon Favreau. We're going to have this big spectacle around it, because that's how you announce a Star Wars movie. They did that
announced it at the Golden Globes last night.
Yeah, I mean, there's opportunity after opportunity, even if you just wanted to throw up something on the website.
Or if they want to,
but they can't do it because, again, they have to rush job this. They have to hurry up and get something out there because, again, the Shills aren't working anymore. All right. And everybody else is dominating the conversation when it comes to Star Wars. This franchise is dying or is already dead. And they got to resurrect this thing somehow.
Well, there's resurrection and there's retention. The only people believing these Shills are dyed-in-the-wool pixie dusters, and they've been losing them. Yeah. I mean, really, the thing with Star Wars, just like with Disney Plus, is not, gee, how can we grow it? Because they don't know how to do that, and they kind of probably know they don't know how to do that. It's how do we keep the few people we have left? How do we keep them from totally abandoning us? Well, they follow these Shills. That's who they listen to. So this is less, I would say, a growth effort and more of a retention effort. Whether it'll be successful, well, that's another story. But some of these people are pretty damn enchanted with the whole thing to the point where they don't want to hear anything else.
Look, these guys are watching their cash cow disappear because, like Chris said earlier, it's all about, getting these giant franchises and using them as a vehicle for their message, for their agenda. That's what the World Economic Forum is all about. And so what happens when you start to lose one of the big dogs in the entertainment game? You're losing Star Wars. Star Wars is going down the drain. we got to hold on to this thing. So yeah, you got to absolutely retain what you got. You don't want to lose that, because if you lose it, okay, there's another big franchise down the drain. And I mean, is anybody going to trust us to come in and buy a new franchise? Like, where does Disney go? Where does Lucasfilm go? They've destroyed everything they've owned. So where do they go now when it's time to get a big franchise that the World Economic Forum can attach an agenda to? You know, where do you go? What's left? You know, everything has been absolutely destroyed. Yeah, I think they absolutely have to retain what little, 500,000 Star Wars fans there may be across the globe. They got to hold on to them guys.
The most ironic thing is the idea that the World Economic Forum is somehow about activism. They are the most establishment people in the universe in their minds, and in fact, in a lot of governments. So, when they say you will own nothing and you will like it, does that apply to my popcorn when I go see this movie? Yes. I mean, that's well, that's fair, not activism. Yeah. I'm sorry, that's just not activism.
We only rent that popcorn.
That depends
for a
on
while.
Which definition you choose to apply to activism. Right?
Well, okay.
Activism is only about enforcing change. It doesn't necessarily have to be change for the better. I mean, any kind of fascist dictatorship ever. Or fascist is very specifically Italian, but any kind of authoritarian society ever was brought on by activism, by activists, deluded, useful idiots who were lined up against the wall after they were successful, but who were useful soldiers along the way. They were activists. I mean,
all right, folks need to go look at the history of Cambodia.
Of course, is in Germany during that little strife in the 40s, right? You had activists there too. They were brown shirts. They were fundamentally the exact same people as the pink-haired people today. The ideology is even strikingly similar. They were activists too.
Good point.
The thing that I see in all of this, and again, I'm going to reference Film Thread here. I guess you all can understand where I get my news when it's not that Park Place. But this WGA story about them literally putting check boxes to say,
wait a minute, Jonas. We'll cover that soon.
Oh, are we covering that today?
We will. We will. Don't you worry.
But I think I think that people are getting tired of all of this, and that I think that some things happened in the later half of 2020 that opened a lot of people's eyes on both sides of the aisle. And whatever the mainstream pushed used to have a lot more strength before that, and then of course before Elon Musk bought Twitter, and then we saw what it was like for someone to take their thumb off the scale on social media. And all of these things that would have shouted someone down, and maybe they would have even been banned in the past, were just allowed to say it. And the world is now adapting to being able to say whatever they want, to add whatever nuance they want when someone shouts some horrible name at you. And I'm here for it. I love it.
And folks, that is a wrap for today. What a fun time this has been, though. And wow, the news just keeps coming when it comes to Star Wars. Hard to say. We love Jon Favreau. We want him to be successful. It's looking tougher and tougher to see how this is going to pan out now that we know that the Mandalorian movie is probably just the last 2 episodes of season 4. Really hard to see how you take that and turn that into something strong for the silver screen. But we'll watch it, and we'll give it its fair shake as that happens. We always do. Folks, you could give us a fair shake. Like this content if you like it by clicking the like button. Also, share, subscribe, and when you click it, you stick it to the algorithms. It's the notification bell. Drop a comment down below. Let us know your thoughts. And folks, wherever you are and whatever you're doing, keep learning, keep growing, and keep having fun.